I watched him leave, his tail flicking at me. Whether it was out of excitement or fear, I don't know. My gut told me the former. He held himself with such calm confidence, but his eyes held an almost fiery conviction. It was startling. How could someone be so at peace when they were about to fight several of those things? I get that he was a faunus and everything, but even faunus felt fear. I remember the screams of the boy, how savagely the Beowulfs pounced on their prey until the cat blocked my vision of the horror. A cold shudder went down my spine. It's not that I cared for the cat. He was repulsive and disrespectful in every way. However, no person should have that as their fate. I let out a gentle breath, trying to calm my shaking hands. I've never felt fear. Nervousness, maybe. Anxiety, possibly. But never fear. I have fought gladiators 3 times my size with semblances that could make armies tremble. And I fought them to victory. Never once did I tremble. I was focused on holding the saber perfectly, moving and weaving around their strikes like a dance, waiting for them to tire out. Hit them to get their aura to 10%, and I win. Simple. These creatures, the Grimm, however, were completely different. They were large and mindless. Their one goal was to sniff out aura and consume. The worst part is, according to the cat, these were a fairly weak species. If he's telling the truth, then that boy who died perished to a Grimm on the lower tiers of their kind. Another shudder went through my body. He had to be lying. No way that cat could take on 30 on his own. I took a breath again. If he's right, then getting worked up will only be a death sentence for both of us. I took a brave glance out the window, seeing him approach the Grimm. He was down low, most likely hoping to get the jump on one. The way he moved, it reminded me ironically of a cat about to pounce on an unexpected mouse. Why isn't he using his semblance? His vanishing semblance would work wonders fighting against these things. There are only 5, 6? Vanish 6 times and take them out! The cat seemed to have picked his target. A Beowulf near him that seemed more interested in sniffing the ground rather than genuinely hunting for another meal. The cat moved slowly. What is he thinking? He should just strike already! What if the Beowulf see him? At least he could take one down before inevitably dying. Another shudder. I would have zero idea of how to take on Beowulfs, so I shouldn't immediately expect death for my own sake. He was mere inches from the Beowulf. He switched the sword to an ice pick stance and ran before the Beowulf could let out its distorted growl, slitting its throat. The creature vanished into a black mist. The other Beowulfs had turned around, possibly sensing the disappearance of a member of their pack. The cat turned around to see 2 charging at him. He dodged one by jumping over quickly, following up with a vantage downwards and slit another Beowulf's throat. He dodged a left swipe from the first Beowulf and went for a quick kick to the chest, which did nothing but help propel the cat away from the monster. I ran to another window to get a closer look, only to make full eye contact with a Beowulf looking into the window. I couldn't help it. I screamed as the Beowulf's distorted howl sounded. I ran back into another room, trying to control my breathing. The Beowulf easily broke through the window with one strike from one of its massive paws. It was getting closer to me. It kept hitting against the wall in an attempt to make a bigger entranceway for its massive body. I could see it in my mind's eye. It was breaking through the wall, and that'll be the end of me. I thought of a way to escape. Unfortunately, without knowing where all the other Beowulfs are, it could be a death sentence. I looked out the window and saw the cat fighting 2 Beowulfs at once, dodging various swipes and bites. He cut one through the stomach, turning to see the situation. Even from afar, I could tell his mind's objective had switched. He vanished towards my location, starting to run, not vanishing again. until he got sideswept from a charging Beowulf. He was tackled out of sight. I verbally sobbed as I saw my one chance of being saved literally swept away. The Beowulf sounded like it was halfway through. I could see its claws swiping inside as it desperately tried to get in. I just closed my eyes and just tried to stay calm. I remember Pyrrha and I training together just last year before the tournament. I remembered the smile of pride she gave me when I actually bested her in the last match. I snapped my eyes open when I heard the sound of a hungry growl. It was in, its devil-red eyes staring at me, examining me. It was sizing up the room, seeing how it would have to try and get me. It was, thankfully, too large for the doorway. My voice was silent. My eyes were wide. This was it. This is how I would die. I felt tears running down my face. No one would save me. I saw it charge at me until something jumped through the glass of a large window beside me. The faunus had returned. The cat vanished and it cut its leg off, immediately following up with a quick stab upward its left arm. The creature roared with pain as the cat did not let up, vanishing again and cutting through its throat, making it disappear. His back was to me, staring at where the creature once was. I was still speechless, not yet fully registering that the beast was dead. I looked down and saw blood starting to drip. Was he injured? If so, how bad? Again, I don't care. I just don't want to see someone die. Not now. If I was being embarrassingly honest, I just didn't want to be left alone again.
Are you okay?
He asked, concern full in his voice. He hadn't turned around, yet he still was looking where the Beowulf stood. What was going through his mind? Possibilities? Pain? Was he still in a hunting mental space where he couldn't afford to turn around?
Weiss, are you okay?
Yes!
No wounds at all?
He asked to confirm. His voice was starting to calm. No, I responded quickly. He took a deep breath, his shoulders visibly relaxing.
Good.
He sheathed the sword and turned around. He had a wound on his left bicep. Looked like a gash from a swipe. Your arm.
It's better than it looks.
He waved his other hand dismissively.
It'll be fine.
That's not the point. It could get infected. Sit. I pushed a chair towards him. He sighed a little, but didn't resist. He walked over and sat in the chair. I regrettably grabbed my canteen and poured water on the wound. He winced, but never complained about the pain I'm sure he felt. I examined the wound. Something, luckily, I had much experience in. Doesn't look deep. Do you think they have some fabric in here?
Dunno. Even if we find something, will it be in condition to wrap the wound?
I sighed at the fact that yet again, he had a point. Worst case, we'll use some of your shirt. He nodded, though not seeming pleased with that possibility. I got up and walked around the house, looking for anything that'll work. The rags in the bathroom were old, dirty, and moth-eaten. I ended up finding a box full of clothing and looked through, finding a plaid shirt that seemed to be none of those things. I took out Myrtenester and cut a long piece of fabric off and began tying it around his wound. It probably needed stitches, but for now this was our best until we could find an artifact, or God's willing. Someone has some medical supplies or healing semblance. Is anything else injured? He shook his head. He didn't look sweaty or tired. How did you learn? He shrugged, looking at his bandages.
Experience.
You learned how to fight those things by experience? He seemed genuinely confused.
Why is that so hard to believe?
I was flabbergasted. How was this confusing? Even in the arena, we are taught what to look for by your teacher. This annoying creature just says experience as if it's the most logical thing in the world. Because We just watched a student get killed by a pack of something you stated was usually weak.
Some people just aren't meant to fight Grim. Even with training, that could still end up happening.
He looked down. He was avoiding the issue and grating on my nerves. Oh, come on. That kid had to have some kind of training as well. Who taught you to fight Grim?
I had someone teach me how to use the sword, but Grim is all a matter of experience. Learning their behavior, how to respond to multitudes of them, and how to keep calm through it all.
He listed these things as if he were some sort of expert. God, he was insufferable. Well, I'm not going to learn from experience. You are going to teach me. He was silent for a moment, weighing his options.
Alright, on one condition.
Ugh, what?
Call me by my first name. Rowan.
He stood up, looking at me. I rolled my eyes. Such a pointless request. But... deal. He nodded his agreement and started walking out that same door. There was a small spike of anxiety seeing the scene again.
Great. It's gonna be sundown in a couple of hours and your canteen is empty, so we'll need to get that filled and see if I can whip up some food for us to eat. And being in a shelter without a hole in the wall would be preferable.
I was ripped from my thoughts as he spoke again. His voice was calm and even, not a single waver in emotion. I stood up and both of us walked out of that house. All I could think about was how much I appreciated that the cat, Rowan, made no comments on my tears. We walked side by side through the empty streets. Every now and then he would stop and listen to veer us away from any danger. After an hour of walking, we finally found a creek.
I'm gonna look around. I won't be too far.
He went into a nearby house. I let out a breath and my stomach growled. I was starving. Obviously, I wasn't going to say anything, as I'm sure he was feeling the same thing. Once my canteen was filled, I followed him into the house. It was fairly large. This was probably going to be one of the higher class houses. It was not fully furnished. Rowan popped up from one of the rooms spontaneously, sword drawn, making me jump a little bit. He blinked.
Sorry, I heard a noise and expected the worst.
I wanted to say something, but every defense I came up with would have just been torn apart by what transpired earlier. I won't die that easily. I instead stated. He nodded his head and looked around, resting the blade on his shoulder.
It's practically empty. All the rooms are like this. Have finished.
What are you thinking? I asked. He seemed very focused on how empty it was.
I don't know. They said it was abandoned, so these people probably escaped as fast as they moved in. I didn't see any signs of attack, so I doubt it was Grim.
So does this place look like a good base of operations for now? He looked around one more time.
Yeah, plenty of rooms to fight in if need be, tall enough to scout around, near some water, and we have some preserved food I found in the kitchen. Telling me that the school did place supplies here and there, just to make sure we don't go hungry for too long.
I let out a sigh. My stomach was growling loudly, not having eaten since before the airship ride. God, that felt like it was ages ago. Well then, let's eat and get some rest, I said immediately, going to where he stated the food was.